Okay, welcome back. In this video, we'll be talking about loops and arrays. First thing I'm going to talk about is arrays. Okay, so this is the basics. Um, okay, the best way I can explain this is that this is an array. This is how it would look in real C++ syntax. Not this here. This is actually what I'm going to explain this a little bit more here. Okay, basically what we're saying here is that we're making an array of 4. So now there's 4 values. So in other words, when I create a data type integer of value, I'm actually creating 4 of them when I use these brackets to indicate that there's an array. Alright, so in other words, I'm saying all of this, or all of this, is equal to all of this. So this is exactly the same. This is exactly the same as this. Okay, so basically I'm creating 4 different integers in memory. They're taking up 4 bytes of memory because it's an integer data type, and I'm structuring it. So now this actually holds 4 variables. Yeah, I think you guys got that. Alright, so now I'm going to go into a little program I've built to explain a little further. I got some declared variables here. When you actually create the variables, that's what they call declaring and initializing. Okay, the first thing I did here was I created a constant max variable, and I initialized its value to 5. Remember that constant means that this value does not change, so it's read-only memory. Okay, so now we're going to go down. As we go down, we see I initialized another variable for count, which as I commented here, this variable will be used in the while loop. There's 3 different types of loops that we're going to be talking about. There's the for loop, there's the while loop, and then there's the do while loop. Alright, so as we're going down here, I'll just keep talking about what's going on. I created a boolean for the value that we're going to be using in the do while loop, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go here. Right now we're going to concentrate on arrays. First thing we did here was we created an array, and we did not initialize it, as it says here, non-initialized arrays, or I should say array. I was going to add a string integer or string variable array, but I figured it would be too much off of scope for the whole video that I'm trying to do here. So we're just going to stick with the integer for now. It's pretty much the same, except for, like I said before, with strings you use the quotation marks. So as you can see, I did do one here, but I didn't do a non-initialized. So as you can see, you got to use quotes and the comma in between each array value. Now, as I was saying before, when you create an array, you create a certain amount of spots. Alright, so right here we're using the variable as the spot. The variable equals 5. So now we're saying that each of these arrays, because we're using max variable as the initial value, or the size of the array, when I'm declaring these integers, so all these are going to equal 5. So in other words, we could put a 5 in here and it would be the same. But instead of doing that, we're just going to use a variable to initialize all of them. Okay. Now there's no really particular any reason for why I'm creating all these arrays. I'm just doing it just to show you the different types of data types that you can use, and to show you how you can initialize, or you can just initialize later. In other words, during declaration you can initialize, or you could, like I did down here, you can initialize an array through a loop. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm creating the array, number array, and I'm using the max value of 5 to store 5 numbers into the array. As you noticed here, anytime you create an array, you use these brackets like I said, and then you put either a number value in or the variable value that you're going to be using. Usually it should be a constant. In other words, it's not going to change. And for now, all variables are going to have initial size. So you're always going to have this max value until you start learning about dynamic arrays, which will come a lot later. Okay. I said, okay, now when you initialize an array for numbers, you would use these brackets, and for any other type of array, you would use these brackets. For numbers, you would just write the number in and then separate it with commas. And then down here with the string, you would, like I said, you would use these quotation marks and then the string that you want to type in. And then use commas to separate. Always remember to use your semicolons at the end of every statement. Okay, and that's pretty much arrays in a nutshell. Now I'm going to show you how to use them with loops. Okay, so try and pay attention here a little bit. We're going to use keywords such as for, while, and do. Alright, now all these keywords tell it when to start looping and what to do. For loop is probably the best for when you're using a set value to loop. So this way you can, with for loops, you automatically use an I, and it stands for increment. That's the word I was looking for. Increment, it stands for increment, and it's natural for programmers to use I in this type of loop. Okay, so it usually is a number, because it's usually going to count. This loop is going to count for you every time. What it's going to do is it's going to work its way down. It's going to read this, and if this value I, which we're initializing to 0, so remember we have these semicolons here. That means that statement is ended. And we're going to go to the next statement, and we're going to read the statement I is less than max. Okay. And if that is true, if I is less than max, it's going to keep doing this. It's going to keep outputting cout. Remember, if we talked about this in the previous videos, cout, and then the string array, and then we're going to use the new I that we're creating in the loop, which is initialized to 0. So basically it's going to tell it I is incremented. So I is going to count the first spot in the index, or the array, and it's going to output it to the screen. Okay, it's going to keep doing this until it equals the max value, or until it equals the max value. Okay, now I guess the best way I could show you how to do how this works is just comment this out for a minute. Still running it. Okay, I can just show you here. So go down here. Let's go into the next part here, while looping. Okay, with the while loop, use the keyword again. The only difference here is you're not really using that integer to loop with. You actually create your own. I created using this count. I'm pretty much doing the same thing. We're using count as a spot, and if count is greater than -1, I'm checking to make sure there's a number in there. We're outputting the number array.